The Frenchman opened the door to step in, while the other fellow swept a low bow to a passing lady and gave a final pull to the costume. Then he too ran up to the carriage and scrambled inside as it drove away. Behind them the noise and light of the party continued unabated. The priest smiled warily at the hooded men. He saw that they were both laughing, still out of breath. It had reassured him to hear one of them speaking in an accent. They were probably Catholics. The cab turned into the street and began to clatter across the cobbles. After a moment's silence, he spoke. "Where are you travelling to, gentlemen?" Neither of the men answered. The carriage took a turn to the right. They were now on a road that was covered in straw to muffle the sound of horses' hooves, and the cab was suddenly much quieter. This street was empty and dark. The lamps had all guttered many hours before. He could hear the men's breathing, quick and rough, but he could not see their faces at all. They were no longer laughing. The darkness pressed on his eyes like a blindfold. He began to feel afraid. What if that Frenchman knew who he was? He tried to stay calm, hearing his voice echoing in the intense blackness of the carriage as he repeated his question. "Where are you going to?" Still there was no answer. His throat tightened. Perhaps they had not jumped into his carriage by chance. How easy it would have been for two figures in domino robes to stand unnoticed in the busy courtyard waiting for him. He had taken little care tonight to be guarded about his visit. "For God's sake, who are you?" he cried aloud. "What do you want?" Neither sound nor movement from the two strangers. Suddenly the priest heard a rustle of fabric and a shuffle of feet. He shrank away, but felt the wall of the carriage against his back. He opened his mouth to call out when a hand came out of the darkness to silence him. He was struck violently onto the floor, and the back of his skull cracked against the seat. He felt a wave of dizziness. One of the men was upon him, pinning his body down. There was a rattling movement above as the other man closed the window shades. He knew that it was not necessary. Nobody would see them on this deserted street. The gesture made him feel that a shade had fallen down upon his life. He struggled free from the arm that stifled him. "You are too late," he cried. "Others already know." It was a gamble, the slimmest of chances. There was a fraction of a pause. "He lies," came a new voice at last. An English accent, well-bred. Before the priest could say more, he felt the cold edge of a steel blade pressed hard against his throat. He struggled to retain a sense of what was happening. Again he opened his mouth, but as he did so, he felt the prick of a knife going in like a needle. His throat felt suddenly loose, though a moment before it had been taut with fear, and his blood poured out as warm and soft as silk. He felt his skin and clothes become hot and sticky as it soaked into the fabric. The men remained silent, waiting while his life ebbed away. He could struggle no more. Already he was weak, his limbs heavy. Even now he could barely frame clear thoughts. His mind was dim. He tried to hold fast to life, but the blackness closed in. It was over. Chapter 1. In tasks so bold can little men engage. The worst of country life was that the houses were always cold. Alexander sat as close to the fire as he could manage without blocking his parents' access to its modest heat. He suspected that his mother, at least, was suffering, but that she stayed further back to allow him most of the warmth. Outside it was either snowing or raining. Alexander could not be sure which. It had been dark since 3 o'clock. They had dined at noon, tea had been brought in at 4, and there were still another 3 hours before bed. His father had not allowed him to go to his chamber to write because the fire had been overlooked during the afternoon and had burned out. He had not finished 20 lines of verse since Christmas, nearly a month ago. The Georgics was open on his lap, and he had been reading the same poem for 2 hours. Virgil was all very well when Alexander was feeling that he, too, might write a poem as good as the Aeneid. But tonight Virgil's youthful verses reproached him. "Will it always be like this if I..."